What's going on, everybody? It's Antz Nafatali here, also known as Antz, National Educator for Wahl Pro Oz, also the owner of Our Way Barber Studio. Today, guys, I'll be showcasing a bit of fade work with Akira's hair. I'm gonna go with a mid-skin drop fade, finishing with the curtains style on top. Before I get into it, guys, I wanna show you a few things that I like to take into account, just reference points that I like to point back to, and it also helps you understand like head shape and what shape you wanna create on top. All these things come into account when you start cutting. One of the main things that I like to point out is the crown. So a dominant growth pattern, things we can't control, we cut around. So we never cut against the hair, we always cut with hair. So a crown, which is always at the back of the head, that spiral thing that we always have, it's always different for everybody, but Akira's got a really reactive one, so we got to cut around that. Also, another reference point I like to point back to is our recession. So where a man naturally recedes, right on the corner, and then we got our occipital bone at the back here. So Akira has a really predominant one. So you can see here, I've used his occipital bone to create his shape through here. So when I think about fades, I think about four main things. So I think about the height first. So we got our low around the temple, we got our mid underneath this point here, which is the crest, and then anything higher than that crest is a high fade. So the second thing I like to think about is the shape of the haircut, shape of the skin fade. So you can see with Akira, we want to keep a lot of this shape through here, so we're going to drop our skin line. The third thing is our type of fade. So there's two types of fades. So we got our stretch fade or our really compressed fade. With Akira, we're going to be using a bit of both, just to complement his head shape. And the last thing is the technique. So there's two types of techniques. We got our ascend and we got our descend. I'm going to be using an ascending technique so you guys at home can see this fade come to life. First off, guys, I'm going to break this down into a horseshoe. So what a horseshoe is, it's just a section where I section out the crown to the recession, which separates the interior from the exterior. So the top from the sides. So we can break down the shape, what we need, and also analyze hair growth. So I'm going to start off by wetting down the hair. On the right side, guys, for you right-handers out there, I like to push with my section. So starting from the crown to the recession, I'm going to do one clean movement here. So wide tooth comb, thumb on top. I'm going to push to my recession. One clean movement. My thumb stays on the section. Change to my fine tooth, and I'm going to comb down. Then I'm going to push away the interior and palm it with my left hand. So growth pattern to growth pattern. So guys, on the left hand side, I'm going to pull to my recession from the crown. One clean movement. I'm going to separate with my finger, change to my fine tooth, and pull down. So you can see, guys, growth pattern to growth pattern. So now we can determine what shape we're going to create on top. So with horseshoe too, guys, it can vary with different canvases. With Akira's, we've got more of a triangle shape. So now that we've got our horseshoe, guys, I'm going to break this haircut down into 6 simple steps. So our first step, I'm going to set the shape with a technique called block graduation. So I'm going to start at the back. So now I'm using my fine tooth comb. And because we're doing a skin fade on Akira, I'm going to go finger tight on his scalp. So I'm using his occipital bone for a reference point to build my shape. So taking off that little corner, and that will be our guide for the rest of the haircut. Moving to my left. So not much to cut off this corner. So my guard should always be on the right. And when I'm moving to the left, my whole body moves, not just my hands. So when I'm using my scissor here, only my thumb is moving. Using my fingers as an anchor point for more control. So every time you use scissors, tension is really important. Guide on the right here, follow through. Nice clean cutting line. So if you look from a bird's eye view, what I'm creating here is a natural U shape. Now we're going to repeat the process on the right side. And remember guys at home, you always want to follow something. What I always like to say is think twice, cut once. Right there, I move, step to my right, using my fine tooth comb, getting that tension, using Akira's head as a guide to create that graduated shape. So you can see here with my comb, I'm going straight onto the scalp, pulling into my fingers, getting tight tension. Again, squaring off, guide on the left here, connect. Last section. Tight tension, guide on the left. Remember only to use that thumb, just like a guillotine. Because we're going for a salon friendly cut, right on these corners here, I'm going to elevate my sections to create a softer finish. So right behind the ear, I'm going to elevate my sections, not too much, just underneath my chest. My guard should be underneath, right there. So diagonal into horizontal sections. Repeat on this side. We're going to elevate on this corner here using our fine tooth comb. And guys, if you're looking for a more creative shape, I would leave these corners nice and heavy. And that concludes our first step. So just to revise really quickly, we've used a block graduation technique to create our shape. From a bird's eye view, it would be U shape, and then we've reduced our weight through here with elevation, using a diagonal section to a horizontal section, using our guide underneath. Now we'll move on to our next step. So from growth pattern to growth pattern, we're going to split this right in the middle. And remember guys, we're working with things we can't control, not against. Even if you have to readjust your section to get it right. So there you have it, growth pattern to growth pattern. So now, same technique. So because we've already done our transition zone, our blend with our block graduation in our first step, we're going to blend in the top into our foundation. So when I cut the top, I like to break it down into 5 zones. So 1 and 5 has already been cut, so our foundation zone. Now we're going to move on to our 2 and 4, and our 3 is right in the middle. So when we break that down even more, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So zones 4 and 2, we're going to slightly elevate to our guide. We're not bringing down to our guide, we're going to elevate just a little bit. So remember, tension is really important. Following our guide, right underneath. Slight elevation. So I have two guides. I've got a guide underneath and on the right. So now, this is where we apply appropriate disconnection. Because we want a longer fringe, we're gonna stop at the ear and we want to start to over direct our line. So we're getting that tight tension. We've got our cutting line, which was naturally a U shape. Once we get to the ear, we're going to apply appropriate disconnection. So what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling away from the Kira's head to have that longer fringe. Cutting line changes. Next section. Now we repeat the process on the other side. So we're going to slightly elevate through this corner here. Guide on our left, and we should have a guide on the bottom, which is right there. And if you want a more heavier shape through the top, all you got to do is cancel out the elevation and bring down and over direct a lot more to create a heavier shape. But because we're creating a salon friendly cut, we're going to use our elevation to soften that blend. So now we're going to apply our appropriate disconnection, changing our cutting line once we get to the ear. So remember guys, if you want that longer fringe, point away from the client's head, still following our guide here, connecting that guide. So we've done our zones 1, 2, 5 and 4. Now we cut out zone 3, which is right in the middle. So following our guide, so we're just going to check our shape through this corner. So you can see we've got a graduation line through here. Clean up that shape. We're going to use that for the top. So you can break this down into sections. But when I cut, I like to cut like I'm in the barber shop, even if I'm shooting a video, just so you guys can see that this can be done in real time. So using my last longest short piece as a guide. So my guide is there, cutting from my guide, not to my guide. My cutting line is gonna gradually get longer and longer. Cutting line. So because this is shorter than the rest, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to let that grow. Now we're going to go back down just to check if everything's in line. So if you're looking from a side profile, our shape will be triangular, shorter to longer. If we're looking from a bird's eye view, our shape would be a natural U shape. If we put down the fringe, that's when our cutting line starts to come out. So maintaining that length in the fringe. So now we're just going to do a quick cross check through the middle, making sure that we are square through the top. And that's the top done. So just a quick revision. We've used our block graduation technique on zones 1 and 5, elevation through 2 and 4, and just a profile section through zones 3. Creating a graduated shape, also a graduated shape on the sides. for my clipper work, I'm going to be using my Wahl Gold Magic Clip. So these recently have just dropped, and what I love about this clipper is actually it's got a DLC blade. So it allows the blade to be cooler for longer, and it's got a sharper cut for it. So before we get into our clipper work, I'm going to section out the fringe. So from the apex, which is the highest point of the head, to the recession, creating a triangular shape with the section. Same process, so pushing on the right side if you're a right-hander. If you're a left-hander, you'd be pushing on the left side. So now I'm pulling because I'm on the left side. Now I've created that triangle section on top. So for our next step, we're going to be removing bulk with our 3-guard, driving through our graduation. So you notice my strokes are not exaggerated C motion. I'm coming through my block graduation. So when you're in a barber shop, make sure you're using your mirror. That's the most underrated tool that barbers and hairdressers hardly ever use. So it's awesome to see your shape through the mirror. So I get a lot of questions with fading. A lot of people ask, do I struggle with certain types of hair? One thing I always say is you always got to trust your process. Without a process, you don't have any efficiency. You don't have any control over the haircut. So with this process, please try it at home. Like I said, I'm going to use an ascending technique. So with the curious head, you can see that we have indentation through here, creating some dark shadows. So like I said guys, with the things we can't control, cut with it, not against it. Utilizing my Wahl comb while removing the bulk. Been loving these gold magics lately. Nice and light on the hand, so it allows you to create some shape with some free flow action, but it also packs a punch with the power. So moving on to our third step, creating my zero line. There's plenty of ways to set this zero line. A lot of people stamp with their trimmer, stamp with their clipper, but for me, to make it easier for myself, I like to flick in my zero line. So we're going for a mid, so right underneath that crest, keeping that curve, placing my zero line with the flick in motion. So with my zero line guys, I like to keep it symmetric to my blend to ensure that my zero line and my fade is nice and symmetrical. So because our blend drops at the back, so does our zero line. So you guys can see my zero line is nice and clean, in line with my blend. So that ensures our fade will be nice and symmetric. Now we're starting on the right side, and because I use the reference point on the other side, I don't need to look on the other side, but if you guys do, use your mirror. Starting our zero line in line with his eyebrow with the flick in motion, following our blend on top. So while putting in this demarcation line, I've got a point of contact on the curious face to ensure that I have dexterity and stability with my tool. So now just connecting these two zero lines here. So following our previous step, I'm going to be using my Wahl Gold Cordless Detailer LI to remove the rest of the bulk right underneath our zero line. So it's actually got a TY blade on it with a DLC cutting blade. So for those who don't know what a DLC blade is, it actually stands for diamond-like carbon. So it allows the blade to be cooler for longer, and it's got a sharper cut. So starting on the side, removing the existing hair, coming right underneath our zero line. So I'm not going all the way up, I'm leaving a little bit of space to create that shade. And you can hear that crunch in that blade while I'm removing the bulk. So guys, again, coming right underneath that zero line to ensure that we have a gradient look even in our balding process. So using my finales, I'm going to be balding out the rest of his hair. So when I use this tool, I like to stretch the skin. So with this tool, I'm not going all the way up to our zero line, right underneath our double zero line. So remember guys, we're using 3 levels, so 000, 00, and then our 0. So now because I'm on a bigger surface, I'm going to be using both prongs, stretching the skin. So what I love about this tool, it's actually hypoallergenic, so kills a lot of bacteria, reduces irritation. So you don't need to apply a lot of pressure, you just let the tool do the work. Coming right underneath our double zero line. And remember to go against the grain. So remember always to be in control. And if you do make a demarcation line with your finale, what I like to do, I like to go down with the grain to soften that line. So before I start fading, I like to use talcum powder, applying it to the skin to reduce irritation and to allow our clipper to glide through the skin when fading. So now we're moving on to our 4th step, which is fade. I'm going to be using an ascending technique, starting off with my half guard, 0.5 lever close, creating a guideline parallel to my skin line. So for recording purposes, I'm only going to be doing a 1/4. First guideline done. Removing our half guard, lever halfway. So we're not going all the way up to our 0.5 line. We're going in between our 0 and our 0.5. So not also using our visuals, but also our ears, listening to see if we're still cutting. And there's our 0 line gone. And if you need to close that clipper, do so. A lot of people ask me questions, how do I get rid of that skin line? I think applying that technique helps you control and to get rid of that skin line. Instead of taking everything to that same line, it allows you for more safety. So our next guideline, we're going to be using our 1 premium guard, lever closed. So you can hear that crunch blade. So once I start to hear that it's not cutting anymore, I'll move on to my next guard. So remember, following our skin line and our blend, ensuring that our fade is consistent. Taking out this half line, I'm going to be using a half guard, lever halfway. Not going all the way up. Adjust your lever if you need to. The higher you go, the more you need to open your lever. The lower you go, the more you close your lever. So moving on to our next guideline, using my 1.5 premium guard to create our next guard. So like previous steps, we're staying parallel to our skin line and our blend. So using our one guard, we're going to be removing this guard line here, created from our 1.5 premium guard. Starting halfway with our lever. So our last guard we'll be using is our 2 premium guard, connecting to our 3. Starting with the open lever, driving through to that graduation, lighten up those dark spots. Closing up. Coming back down to a 1.5 guard to connect that blend. Starting with the open lever. So when I think about fading, I think of it as a process. So when a line's not coming out, process of elimination. So slowly close your lever till that line goes away. So now we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. So while I'm fading the back, with my guidelines I've made them a little bit bigger because at the back it's always a lot denser. So having that room to fade allows you to have that blurrier fade. So next step, I'm going to be edging out with my cordless gold detail ally, placing an anchor point, starting at the top, then connecting from the bottom. So just like clockwork, I'm going to be pivoting, ensuring that I have an anchor point. And you can see that by outlining last, it brings the fade together. Same process on the other side. So Akira has a strong outline. So what I want to do is just complement it. I don't want to force it into place. Moving on to our last step, which is my favorite step, personalizing and styling. So removing weight in areas that you can see. So for everyone it'll be different. Everyone's got a different barber's eye. So this is more feel and visual. So anywhere that you feel is heavy, grab that section and deep point cut. So straight into the hair shaft, allowing for better movement and a better finish. Using a wire tooth, holding the hair closer to the head and straight in with my scissor. So only my thumb is moving for more control. So I'm going to do that just at the back here, which holds a lot of weight for better movement when I style it. So a little bit of scissor over comb, fine tuning that blend, remembering to not readjust the shape but to fine tune it. So our last step, I'm going to be styling. I'm using a primer, so a bit of sea salt spray to bring out that flow when I blow dry. So now I'm going to finish off with my Wahl 5-star blow dryer and my Wahl round brush. So for me, I like to start styling the side first, get my walls nice and dry, and then move on to the top. So when you're trying to achieve flow, I blow dry in a diagonal motion. So once we've got that dry, I start from back to front. So instead of starting from front to back, I like to start this way because I like to dry into dry hair. So if I'm starting in the front, I'll be drying into wet hair. So this way, I'll be drying into dry hair. So for more structure and more control of the shape, I do it from back to front. So once I've got the shape set, I hit it with the cold air to lock it in. Now to lock in this shape, I'm going to be using a shine paste and run it through the roots. So I'm not going for a locked shape with Akira's hair. For curtains and flow, you want it to be reworkable throughout the day. So what I like to do, I like to run my fingers through the hair, get the product through it, and then you can personalize in the end. So with product, less is more. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you're chasing that gold magic or that gold detail at LI, jump on our website on Barber Temple and check them out. Thank you.